Okay, this is a story about the captain of the ship. I want you to imagine that you're going on a cruise, great big ship, 200 people. You're going up the gangplank, and as you go up the gangplank, the captain welcomes you personally to the ship. He goes, "Hi, Chris. Welcome on board. How are you doing? And Louise, good to see you. Miles, welcome. Sally, good to see you on the ship." He knows everybody's names as they come up the gangplank. And you think, how does he do that? I've never met him before. And you make some investigations once you're on board, and you find that what he does, he looks at every passport and he memorises the face and the name so he can greet people personally because he cares about customers. And you think, well, that's pretty impressive. I don't know if it makes him a good captain or not, but it's impressive. Customer care is important. Anyway, you go down to your cabin, and when you get there, on your pillow, there's a little folded sign, and it says, "Dear Dave, welcome to your cabin. Your bed has been made for you personally by the captain because he cares about quality." Now, does that make him a good captain? Now, probably not. You're kind of thinking, that's a bit weird. I can't believe he's made all the beds on the ship. He hasn't got time. Has he only made mine? Why has he only made mine? This is just too weird. So clearly it's not a good way to control quality, to try to do everything yourself. So you're a little bit freaked out about that, but you think, well, never mind. I'll worry about that later. You get changed, you go down to dinner, and there's all these waiters in their very smart black and white outfits serving the soup, and you think, hang on a minute, I recognise that one. And of course, it's the captain serving the soup. He likes to serve the soup every night because he likes to be in touch with the workers. And by the way, I don't mean workers in any derogatory way. They are the people who do the real work, and that's great. And the captain likes to be in touch with them. And you're thinking, well, it's nice of him, in touch with the workers. But on the other hand, who's steering the ship? So after the meal, you decide to investigate that. And on the way to the bridge, not quite anatomically correct this bit, but you have to go with it. On the way to the bridge, he goes past the engine room. And the door is slightly ajar, and just through the door, in the gloom inside, just illuminated in the orange glow of the furnace, you can just make out the shadowy figure of somebody stoking coal into the boiler. Great big muscles sweating as he toils away. I think you're probably ahead of me at this point. Yes, it's the captain. And you're thinking, oh my God, he's even stoking the boiler. By the way, this is because there's been a problem with the current boiler stoker, and the captain is not afraid to get his hands dirty. And also, he has actually got the biggest muscles on the ship. He used to be a professional boiler stoker. He's brilliant at it. And he loves to go back to doing what he used to do. It's simple, it's easy, isn't it, to go back to do what you used to do. And maybe you've still got the big muscles. So he's stoking the boiler, and you're thinking, my God, I really want to know who's steering this ship. Maybe it's being steered by a bedmaker or a waiter. Anyway, so you go up to the bridge, and of course, when you get there, there's nobody there. The bridge is deserted and the ship is just drifting at random. And there's icebergs all over the place. And in fact, it's heading straight towards an iceberg. So you think, right, I'm going to have to steer this ship. But which way do I turn the wheel? Because if I turn it this way, I think the rudder will probably go that way. But that means the ship... And you're about to go the wrong way when the captain comes running up from the boiler room and he grabs the wheel and he just manages to swerve the ship around the iceberg and it just misses the ship. And the captain goes, "Whew, that was a close one. Whew, I thought we were a goner then. Still, ended up well in the end. That's the main thing." God, he says, "I love being the captain. It's so exciting and there's so much variety. It's brilliant being the captain." Now, what are you thinking? Good captain? I'm thinking he's a terrible captain. Even though he cares about customers, cares about quality, he is not afraid to get his hands dirty, he's in touch with the workers, all those things. He's actually a terrible captain because he's not doing whatever it is that we want a captain to do. So the question is, what is captainness? What is leadership? What do we actually want the leader to do? And it's not to do anybody else's job. That's the question. What do we want him to do? And I suppose what we want him to do really is three things: vision, systems, and people. So first of all, we want him to provide a vision of where the ship is going. And actually, my analogy breaks down slightly on this because clearly this ship is going from Southampton to New York. It doesn't need a vision. But your company, whatever it is, needs a vision, and that can really only come from the person at the top. I'm not going to really talk much more about vision, but clearly that's important. But this story is really about systems and people. We want the captain to set up systems that work and to have the right people in the right jobs motivated. So vision, systems and people. So let's suppose, for example, that the captain delegates the steering to his navigator, and he nips into the toilet. And while he's in the toilet, the ship runs aground. Who gets court-martialed? Is it the person steering or is it the captain? And the answer is, it's the captain. Why? Is he paid extra just to run the risk of possibly being court-martialed if something goes wrong somewhere in his ship? Is he paid to run that risk? No, he's paid to set up the systems and the people. Because if the ship runs aground, he's either put the wrong person in charge of steering, or he hasn't got a good enough system of maybe training and maps and things. So it's the captain's fault. And in fact, everything's management's fault. Okay, EMF, everything's management's fault. So let's suppose, for example, a bed isn't made. That's the captain's fault, because he should have employed good bed makers, or he should have employed a good person to make sure that the bed makers are doing it right. So it all stops with the captain. If the soup is a bit salty, it's the captain's fault. Should have employed a better chef, should have investigated previous complaints about salty soup, whatever it is. But everything comes back to the captain in the end. He is responsible for every single thing on that ship, which is kind of scary. But if you think about it, vision, systems and people, if one of those doesn't happen, it's the captain's fault. So what we want is a captain who's just standing on the bridge, thinking about the systems and thinking about the people. And he's going, everything all right, number one? Beds being made, are they? Have you got a system for making the beds? Have you got traceability if there's a problem? Have you got a training record of all the bed makers? And he's just asking the occasional question about systems, but mainly he's calmly standing on the bridge, not running around like a mad guy actually making beds. Now, let's suppose that a disgruntled bed maker thinks, that captain, he just stands around on the bridge all day asking if everything's okay. He doesn't really do any real work. And they push him off into the sea. And the captain's fallen into the sea, he's drowned, and he's dead. Ooh. What will happen to the ship? And the answer is, the ship should be absolutely fine. Ideally, you wouldn't even notice that the captain's gone, because the systems carry on, the people carry on, you've still got your vision, everything should be fine. And that's really the ideal captain. So if you find yourself thinking, my boss doesn't do anything, when my boss goes on holiday, everything's fine, then that means you've got a good boss. If you can't function without your boss, that means that either you're incompetent or your boss is a control freak. So if you're any good and your boss is any good, you should be absolutely fine without your boss. And your boss's job is just to think of the longer term plan of where we're going, to keep the systems up to date, keep the people up to date. But they should be thinking further ahead, maybe 6 months to a year ahead. You should be fine for a few months without your boss. So your boss might introduce the occasional new project, but all the processes should run absolutely fine without your boss. So the fact that you can push the captain off the ship and it's all fine proves he's a good captain. And although you'll be fine to start with, in a few weeks or a few months' time, you'll then start to suffer because you'll start to be thinking, well, this bit's not working anymore. And of course, the ship is relatively easy because it is the same every day. But your company's getting bigger all the time, new products, new markets, grenades lobbed into your ship by competitors. And therefore, it's a constant, endless job for your captain to keep the systems up to date and to keep the people happy. Now, should the captain always be on the bridge just supervising and thinking? The answer is no. Occasionally he should go around the ship. And I think there are two things the captain should do. The first one is management by walking about. So the captain should, once a day, spend maybe an hour just walking around the ship. And he should go all the way through the whole ship, walk past the bed makers, just check they're happy, go through the kitchen. And if he goes past the bed makers and they're all fighting and there's burst pillows and feathers and mess, he should start thinking, I'm not sure if this management of these people is really working. And if he goes through the kitchen, there's a dead mouse floating in the soup, then he should probably think, I don't know, I'm worried about the management of this kitchen. So he just takes the temperature by management by walking about, just having a look. That's the way he checks on his systems and his people. The other thing he should do, I believe, is a little bit of back to the floor. You've probably seen the programme where the big boss goes and cooks soup and serves soup for a day or makes beds for a day. And of course, although the boss is useless at doing those things, he learns loads about what it's really like to be those people, what's really involved in that job. He discovers a certain amount of problems, but the main thing is he can get a feel for whether the systems really work. Because if he just asks his senior managers, is everything okay? They're all passing up good news to him. They're all telling him everything's fine. No one's going to say, my department's hopeless because I'm a bad boss. So everyone says, oh, my department's all fine. So the risk is that the captain floats on a sort of raft of bullshit that's provided by all these people below him. So the only way to really get through that raft of bullshit is to do management by walking about and back to the floor, because then you can really find out what it's like, what's really going on. Because the normal guys at the coalface, they'll tell you it like it is. So vision, systems and people, that's what the captain's for. It may not look impressive, but that's what we want. We don't want the headless chicken manager running around. And just a final thought, for you, you might be a working captain. So you might be on a very small ship where you have to do, let's say, a bit of selling as well as a bit of running of the show. But don't start thinking that the selling, if you like, the stoking of the boiler, is what you're really there for. Because it's not. That's a distraction from the management. And I think a lot of people think management is a distraction from the work that they do to justify their existence. But fee earning or selling or whatever it might be that you do is a distraction from management. And ideally, you will get to a point where you could delegate that. And if it's only part of a person's job, maybe you can delegate that to somebody who's already doing something else as well, and it could become part of their job. But it shouldn't really be part of your job. Ideally, your objective is to be a pure manager, because then you can do it properly. So there we are. That's the story of the captain of the ship.